Tonight we are drifting into the warm, quiet darkness of the Middle Nile, where the water moves like a long black ribbon under the moon, and the air smells faintly of wet reeds, smoke from cooking fires, and that dusty, sun-baked stone smell that never fully leaves your clothes. You're standing on the riverbank in Nubia, somewhere between the wide bends and rocky outcrops where the Nile doesn't just flow. It decides. It decides who eats, who travels, who sleeps peacefully, and who stays awake with one eye open. And yes, before you start feeling too confident, this is one of those nights where you probably won't survive this, because you're about to learn that the Nile at night is not a gentle bedtime documentary. It's a place with teeth and moods. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And as always, tell me where you're listening from, and what time it is for you right now. Are you tucked into bed in the city? Or listening with a window cracked open somewhere rural, with night sounds creeping in? Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're barefoot at first because that's how it happens. Shoes are precious out here. Leather takes time, effort, and a surprisingly dramatic amount of complaining to make. Besides, the sand still holds the day's warmth, and it's oddly pleasant under your feet, like walking across a giant sun-warmed loaf of bread. The last orange streaks of sunset fade behind the palm silhouettes. The sky above you deepens from apricot to violet, then into that dark blue that feels thick enough to scoop up with your hands. Stars appear slowly, one by one, as if they're being lit by someone very patient and very bored. The Nile is right in front of you, broad and steady, its surface reflecting the sky like a moving mirror. But it isn't silent. It makes a constant low sound, a soft sloshing, a gentle lap, like a giant animal breathing in its sleep. You watch the water long enough and you start to understand why ancient people treated it like a living god. It behaves like one. Behind you, the village settles. Mud brick homes, low, rectangular, the color of toasted clay, hold the day's heat. Smoke curls from small fires where dinner has just finished cooking. You smell roasted grains, maybe a bit of fish and something sharp and earthy, onions or wild herbs. A child laughs somewhere. A goat complains loudly because goats always complain no matter the century. Then the sounds begin to thin out, as if the whole settlement is pulling a blanket over its head. And that's when you notice the people who aren't settling. They're gathered near the water, standing in small clusters, their bodies relaxed but their eyes alert. They wear simple linen wraps and cloth head coverings, and they carry long poles that look like walking sticks, except you can tell they're not for walking. They're for probing, measuring, pushing away whatever the river might offer up in the dark. One man squats by the bank and dips his hand into the water, then rubs his fingers together like he's testing the river's mood. Another adjusts a small oil lamp, shielding the flame from the breeze with his palm. The light glows amber, soft and unhurried. These are the riverkeepers, the night watchers, the people who stay awake while everyone else pretends the Nile is harmless. A mainstream historical fact, one you can practically feel in your bones standing here, is that Nubia, the region south of Egypt along the Nile, was not some forgotten backwater. It was a powerful and wealthy land, especially during the time of the Kingdom of Kush. Nubians controlled trade routes, gold resources, and river travel, and at certain points in history, Nubian kings even ruled Egypt as the famous 25th dynasty. That means you're not just in some sleepy village with a few fishermen. You're standing in a region that has been a strategic artery of empire. Every boat that passes through here matters. And at night, boats pass, because trade doesn't care if you're tired. A man notices you lingering awkwardly near the bank, trying to look like you belong. He gives you that slow up-and-down glance people have always used when they suspect you might be useless, which is fair. You probably are. He gestures with his chin, the universal language of, "Come over here and don't make it weird." You step closer. The air is cooler now. Not cold, just blessedly less aggressive than the daytime heat. In the distance, frogs begin their nightly chorus, and insects buzz like tiny rattles. The man speaks, his voice calm, gravelly, like someone who doesn't waste energy on unnecessary syllables. He introduces himself as something that sounds like Hermac, Though you're not entirely sure you heard it correctly. You nod anyway because pretending you understand things is one of your strongest survival skills. He points out toward the river, where the moon is beginning to rise. It's huge, low on the horizon, pale gold, and slightly distorted by heat haze. It looks like someone dropped a giant coin into the sky. The reflection stretches across the Nile like a pathway, and for a moment it feels like you could step onto it and walk away from all your responsibilities. Unfortunately, your responsibilities tonight involve not getting eaten. Hermack motions toward a small wooden boat tied to the bank. It's narrow, sturdy, and worn smooth from years of use. A bundle of reeds rests inside, along with a net, a clay jar, and a coiled rope. You can tell this boat has stories, mostly unpleasant ones. The riverkeeper kneels and checks the knots, then tests the rope with a quick tug. He works with practiced confidence, like he's done this 1,000 times. Because he has. The Nile doesn't give out participation trophies. You either learn quickly, or you become a cautionary tale. You crouch beside him, and your fingers brush the damp wood. It smells like river mud and sun and something faintly fishy, which, honestly, is the perfume of this entire region. Hermack points to the water again and murmurs something. You catch one word, hippo. Your spine stiffens. Yes, hippos, the so-called river horses. Though there's nothing horse-like about them unless you've met a horse that can crush your ribcage while screaming like a demon kettle. This is where your mind tries to help you by offering useless modern trivia. Like the fact that hippos are among the deadliest animals in Africa, even today. Which is not soothing information. It's the opposite of soothing. It's actively unsoothing. But the riverkeeper doesn't look afraid. Respectful, yes. Alert, definitely. But not panicked. That's one of the first things you learn standing here. The people of the Nile don't treat the river like a horror movie. They treat it like weather. Dangerous, but normal. Something you live with. He takes a pinch of mud from the bank and rubs it on his forearm. You stare at him. He glances at you like, what, you've never moisturized with river sludge before? This is your first quirky tidbit of the night. People along the Nile used mud for practical reasons, cooling, insect deterrent, even skin protection. Some traditions included mixing mud with plant ash or oils. And yes, in some places crocodile dung was even rumored to have medicinal or protective uses, though historians still argue whether such practices were widespread or exaggerated by later writers who thought everything southern was bizarre. You quietly decide you're going to be very grateful for modern lotion in the future. A few more riverkeepers arrive. One carries a woven basket. Another has a small drum tucked under his arm. Someone brings a clay cup of beer, thick, grainy, and slightly sour. Not the crisp, refreshing kind you'd buy at a store. This is ancient beer. It's basically bread you can drink. Someone offers you a sip. You take it because refusing hospitality in a small river community is a great way to get socially exiled and possibly fed to the crocodiles out of spite. The beer is warm and lumpy. You swallow anyway, smiling politely, as if you've just tasted the finest beverage on earth. One of the men chuckles, and you can tell he knows exactly what you're thinking. The laughter is soft, friendly, not mocking, just amused in the way people get when they've watched outsiders suffer before. A gentle breeze moves across the water, stirring the reeds. The palm fronds whisper. The village behind you dims as fires are covered and doors are shut. Now the world belongs to the watchers. You climb into the boat. It rocks slightly and your body stiffens. Hermack steadies it with his pole. The others climb in with the casual ease of people who have never once in their lives considered falling into the Nile a comedic accident. The boat pushes off. The water accepts you, swallowing the sound of the shore. The village lights fade behind you. Ahead, the river is wide and black and alive with reflections. Stars glitter above, mirrored below, and for a moment it feels like you're floating through the sky itself. The pole dips into the riverbed with a soft thunk. The boat glides forward. Your senses sharpen without your permission. You listen harder. You smell more. You notice every ripple, every distant splash. This is the Middle Nile at night, and it's both peaceful and unsettling in that special way only nature can manage. Like it's trying to lull you to sleep, while also quietly reminding you that you are made of meat. As you drift, Hermack speaks softly, pointing toward the far bank where dark shapes rise against the moonlight. Rocky outcrops, low cliffs, places where crocodiles might sun themselves during the day and slide into the water when the heat fades. You can't see any crocodiles, which is somehow worse. A mainstream fact that hums beneath this scene is how essential the Nile was as a transportation highway. In Nubia, as in Egypt, the river was the easiest way to move goods, people, and messages. Desert travel was brutal and dangerous. The Nile, for all its threats, was the lifeline. And that meant controlling parts of it, watching it, guarding it was a form of power. You begin to understand why riverkeepers exist. They're not just fishermen. They're not just guards. They're a living system of knowledge passed down through generations. They know the currents, the sandbars, the seasonal changes, the animal habits, the places where boats can get stuck, the spots where the water suddenly deepens. And you know how to charge a phone. So, congratulations. The boat glides past a patch of reeds. Something moves within them. A rustle, a subtle shift. Your heart leaps into your throat like it's trying to evacuate. One of the men casually taps his pole against the side of the boat. Not hard, just enough to send a vibration through the water. The reeds stop moving. Maybe it was a bird. Maybe it was a crocodile. Maybe it was the Nile itself playing with you. No one comments. No one reacts. They've learned the first rule of the night watch. Panic wastes energy. Above you, the moon climbs higher. Its reflection breaks into shimmering pieces across the water. The boat continues forward, and the night wraps around you like a slow, cool blanket. You realize, with a kind of sleepy awe, that you are now part of a rhythm older than memory. A rhythm of river and sky. And the watch has begun. The boat keeps sliding forward, and you start to feel the strange sensation of leaving the ordinary world behind. The village is now a smudge of darkness, and the Nile is a wide, patient road of water. It isn't rushing. It isn't hurrying. It's just going. Like it has all the time in the universe. Which, to be fair, it kind of does. The riverkeepers sit low in the boat, relaxed but watchful, like cats pretending not to care while secretly monitoring everything. The oil lamp at the bow gives off a soft golden glow. It doesn't throw light far, just enough to illuminate hands, rope, and the glossy surface of the water near the boat. You can hear the gentle creak of wood, the occasional splash of a pole dipping into the riverbed, and the steady chorus of night insects along the banks. Somewhere in the reeds, a frog calls out, and another frog answers, and you start to suspect they're having a deeply dramatic argument about something important, like who owns which lily pad. Hermack shifts slightly, leaning toward you. His voice is low, quiet enough that it feels like the Nile itself might overhear. He explains, in a mix of gestures and words you mostly understand, that the night watch isn't one job. It's several. And it's not just about danger. You glance at him like, what else is there besides not dying? But he points upriver, then downriver, then toward the banks. His hand makes slow sweeping motions, like he's outlining an invisible map. There are fishing grounds to guard. There are docks where traders tie up. There are narrow passages where boats can scrape against rocks. There are sandbars that shift like living things after floods. The night watch is part navigation service, part security, part emergency response team. Except with fewer uniforms and more mud. A mainstream historical fact that fits neatly here is that Nubian communities, especially during the Kushite period, were deeply connected to trade. The Nile was a major corridor not only for local goods like grain and pottery, but also for valuable resources like gold, ivory, ebony, incense, and exotic animals that moved northward into Egypt and beyond. Meaning, if you control the river, you control wealth. And wealth, as always, invites trouble. Hermack points to a second boat drifting farther ahead, barely visible except for its faint lamp glow. Another watch team. They keep distance, spreading out like silent guardians along the river. You realize the river is being patrolled the way a city street might be patrolled today. Except instead of flashing lights and radios, there are poles, lamps, and men who can tell the difference between a fish splash and a crocodile splash. You, meanwhile, can barely tell the difference between a splash and your own imagination panicking. The boat eases closer to the eastern bank, where reeds grow thick. Hermack gestures for silence, and everyone goes quiet so smoothly it's like a single organism shutting its mouth. You hold your breath, not because you're trained, but because you're copying them like a nervous tourist copying locals in a foreign restaurant. The riverkeeper at the back lifts his pole and gently probes the water, pushing it through the reeds. You hear a soft scraping sound as it brushes submerged plants. Then something else. A heavy exhale. Not a hiss, not a growl. More like a deep, lazy snort. You freeze so hard your muscles feel like they've turned into stone. The men don't panic. They don't even look surprised. One of them mutters something, and another softly clicks his tongue, like he's scolding an animal that's being mildly annoying. Hippo. The hippo is close enough that you can hear it breathe. And in the moonlight you see a rounded shape, barely above the water, like a floating boulder that decided to become alive. You've seen pictures of hippos. They always look silly in photos like oversized bathtub toys. In real life, at night, in the Nile, they look like ancient armored tanks with feelings. One of the riverkeepers gives you a sideways glance and smiles faintly. It's not a warm, reassuring smile. It's the smile of someone thinking, this outsider is about to learn something. You can almost hear the unspoken words. Try not to scream. It makes you look tasty. A light joke slips out of your brain before you can stop it. You whisper, so, do we pay it a toll? Hermack doesn't understand your exact words, but he catches the tone. His eyes crinkle with amusement. Another man quietly snorts, laughing without making a sound, which is honestly impressive. The hippo shifts, water rippling around it. Your boat holds still. The riverkeepers stop moving, stop probing. Even the lamp flame seems to steady. It's a strange moment of negotiation. You're not speaking. The hippo isn't speaking. But both sides understand the rules. We are here. You are here. Let's not make this a thing. Historians still argue whether ancient Nubians hunted hippos regularly or avoided them whenever possible. There's evidence of hippo hunting in art and artifacts across the Nile region, but many scholars suggest that for everyday people, avoiding a territorial hippo was usually the smartest policy. And you, personally, are now firmly on team avoid. After a long, tense pause, the hippo sinks slightly, then drifts away into the reeds with the casual confidence of an animal that knows it owns the entire river. The riverkeepers exhale quietly, and the boat begins moving again. You realize your shoulders were clenched so tightly you could have cracked walnuts with them. Hermack murmurs something that you interpret as first lesson. He taps the side of the boat gently with his pole, then points to the reeds again. He's teaching you, without formally teaching you, how the night watch works. It's not about fighting the river. It's about reading it. You glide forward, and the bank opens up. The reeds thin, replaced by sandy stretches and scattered palms. In the distance, you can see faint silhouettes of cattle or goats near the village outskirts, gathered close to enclosures. One of the men begins to speak in a low voice, telling a story. His words roll like slow waves. You don't catch everything, but you understand enough to follow the shape. He's talking about a time when a trader's boat hit a hidden rock at night and began taking on water. The riverkeepers had to respond quickly, pulling the boat to shore, saving sacks of grain, and guiding the men through the shallows before the current could drag them away. It's not just bravery.